Hello everyone. My apologies for being late. I decided to invest in some Crocs because I'm going to be in California for a couple of weeks, and I love the beach, but when I go, there's always that terrible problem of your your feet get sandy and the sand sticks to your feet. So I wanted to make sure that I was prepared this time. And I realized this last minute because I fly out tomorrow night. So I was like, let me order some. And I ordered it to a store that was like an hour away from my house. I thought I ordered it to one that was only 15 minutes. So I was out there driving and I just got back. But I hope that everyone has had a good week since the last time that we chatted. This week, the topic was on the whole thing with health and how it's been hijacked by John D. Rockefeller with the whole big pharma scheme. And it's crazy that that happened because so many people today rely on modern medicine, and you wouldn't even have a crisis with drugs like we have without this dependency on pharmaceutical drugs. And when you think about things like how oil, its primary use was used for medicine before it became used for vehicles. Hello, evenly matched. I hope you're doing well. On my second channel, there was also the topic of backrooms and liminal spaces. So backrooms, if you're not familiar with that term, is this place described by many people on the internet. It said it started on creepypasta. But there are these places that people find themselves in. Now, I know this resembles a lot of video games, but in the comment section, some people are mentioning backrooms in their dreams. I looked at some videos on TikTok and YouTube about it, and pretty much it looked like a person was just going through these liminal spaces or never-ending hallways, and they say if they encounter some kind of creature like shadow people, Slender Man, or other weird hideous figures, that it's an omen and that person will be basically eaten or severely harmed. And there are different levels of backrooms that people can get to, and they're pretty much these weird alternate dimensions. It goes into this whole idea of being in a simulation and there being a multiverse, sort of like what Marvel hints at. And so just the concept of being in a weird place trapped with nothing but creepy creatures and you're the only one there, I mean, that in itself is terrifying. It's its own urban legend that messes with the psyche. But we are seeing more and more reference to simulations and living in one. And I will say this, I feel like I know, like, when I was on TikTok, it's interesting to me how the algorithm works, because it will give you what it believes that you want more of or want to see, and it is run by by the Chinese government. And so when you think about it, for me, TikTok gave me a lot of videos. I don't know if anyone heard of this code, but it was 0010110. And this whole 0010110 code was given to these people way back a few years ago, and it said that this code is the code to exit the Matrix. And so August 27th was supposed to be a big day of a shift in consciousness, but there's also these ties to extraterrestrials and this idea that people are in a simulation and all of that. When you get into the ideas of alternate dimensions or alternate realities, it does beg the question, going back to the whole CERN thing, that if there were alternate dimensions or alternate timelines, would someone want to potentially find a way to quantum leap? Now, there are people out there that believe in quantum leaping, not in the particle accelerator or the Flash or Marvel type of way, but through the use of your mind and the idea that every single version of you exists at the same time, and depending on how you shift your mindset, you can shift to a reality where that version of you is doing whatever. And this is why some people would reference manifestations to this. In the scientific community, it's all debated about alternate dimensions, and then the idea that time is linear is its own thing. But the idea of ending up in a back room randomly just seems very unnerving. So those are the two things that I wanted to bring to the table tonight as far as discussion, because alternate dimensions are fascinating, as is the idea that our whole medicine industry has been hijacked, and why so many people believe in the idea of going to medical professionals who treat but don't cure. And back in the day, there were lots of herbal remedies. However, many of those have been deemed pseudoscience, not real. And even with supplements, like, more and more studies are coming out about the value of certain supplements like vitamin D. And a lot of vitamin D, of course, is naturally best gotten from the sun or from eating foods that are vitamin D rich. Modern diets aren't very good with catching all of the proper nutrients, so a lot of people miss out on that. I see Evenly Matched 40 said medical system is whack. Yeah, it definitely is. It's more like with cancer, unfortunately. If someone is battling cancer here, or someone I know, my heart goes out to you and prayers. But they make more money off of keeping someone alive and giving them chemotherapy, and it's a slow death. And a lot of times you have lifelong patients that make these hospitals rich because they constantly have to pay for tests like labs, x-rays, scans, appointments, follow-ups, physical therapy, treatment. And so they're getting rich off of the fact that these people can never be cured. They can only be treated as a lifelong patient. And hi, Minimus. How are you? And I see Minimus said, I've been in the house all summer, and I'm fine. I've been in the house all summer, sick, and I'm fine. Well, I'm glad that you're fine. Sorry to hear that you've been sick. And I can relate with the whole sick thing as far as, this cough. It is dwindling. But yeah, they definitely like to go in and really just keep people bound to the system of medicine as far as being a lifelong patient that they have to continuously treat. And it's sad because when you think about things like the opioid crisis, narcotics are drugs, just like street drugs that CIA plants in communities, like giving hippies psychedelics or placing crack cocaine within the black community, or these doctors overriding opioids in rural communities. Like, they know what they're doing with these drugs, and a lot of these modern pharmaceutical drugs use oil, and it's made the oil barons rich. And I see that Evenly Matched 40 said, you have to do way too much of your own research just to find out certain things regarding health. That should be basic knowledge. So true. Minimus said, I'm great, how are you? Glad to hear you're doing great, Minimus. I'm doing well as well. And interesting breakdown of that word, the etymology of medicine. Exactly. Medicine has sin in it when you pronounce it a certain way. Evenly Matched 40 could at least teach kids it in school, but no. Waste time with a bunch of other useless crap you have to memorize. Yeah, a lot of education today, which again, the Rockefellers and, other families that you could say were probably the Illuminati families, have a hand in, is our modern education system. And much of our modern education system is teaching us rote memory, memorizing things so we can get good scores. But when it comes to life skills like, how do I purify water? How do I start a fire? How do I go fishing? How do I go hunting? How do I, skin something? Things that if there was an EMP attack and all of our technology was gone and we could not Google anything, then we would be defenseless. And those who had those skills, they would be the ones who would benefit the most. But we are in this information age and this age of technology where we don't see that ever happening. But I was just thinking about, for instance, with this whole electric car thing, California is saying that they're not going to make any more cars that run on oil, which is interesting that now the oil thing can rest, but these oil barons still have their hand in these pharmaceutical drugs. But they're saying now they want it to run on electricity, which means more tracking. Even then Europe is also not going to make any more cars that run on oil after 2030, and this is supposed to be good also for the environment. But this idea that we're going to have everything automated and run on electricity, well, what happens if we have a solar flare issue or an EMP? Well, everyone's basically incapacitated, because there's no way that we're going to have a big Faraday cage to stop that from happening. And if you're not familiar with a Faraday cage, it's pretty much this concept that if a solar flare hit that took out all of the electrical devices, a device that was kept in, like, say, a bird cage, it would prevent it from losing its power. But everything outside of it would be struck. Minimus said bookworms dig holes. Minimus said I'm moving to California in a month. Oh, nice. Well, I know a lot of people are exiting California. It's nice to hear you're going. I think it's a beautiful state. Very pricey, lots of homelessness, and I wish you best in your move. I'll be in California for a couple of weeks this month for work, and then also, ironically, for a mini vacation starting tomorrow. So, yeah, interesting place. And there's just definitely a lot of changes that they're making, and I really feel like they used COVID to rapid breakneck make a lot of this happen. And just the amount of censorship and tracking that we've been subjugated to as a result of this. It's interesting too, I know I mentioned this last week, that Anthony Fauci is stepping down. I wonder who's going to take his place for being the new spokesman or woman of the CDC. And I see Minimus that our twin flame decides our path. Can you explain more of that? Minimus, I'm familiar with the term twin flame, but I'm curious what you mean by that. And sorry guys, my throat was getting a little dry, so I was drinking. I know for some people who do not like hearing mouth noises, hearing someone drink online can be a little irritating, so I apologize. But yes, there's just a lot of changes happening. And sometimes I do wonder with, like, these limitless spaces or these, like, alternate timelines, because I am a believer that in a way there are every opportunity, whether you take it or not, is a possibility that does exist somewhere. Do I believe that I have the ability to travel it with a machine or something, like time travel? I don't really believe in time travel, but I do believe in the idea that in a way everything isn't linear and it all is as, like, it's all happening at once. And in a way I do believe you can shift based on the way you think to a new possibility. Last week we talked a lot about how if you think negatively, you set yourself up for failure, self-fulfilling prophecies, negative manifestation. It's no different than faith, and how the power of death and life are in the tongue. The same thing, so as it thinketh, so he is. You see that example with the children of Israel with the 12 spies when they sent them into the promised land, and they said they were as grasshoppers, and then they were seen as grasshoppers. So I know that our thoughts and our words do shape our reality, and I do believe it's possible to shift realities, because to me a reality is just what you experience. Is there one universal reality? In a way there is, but I also believe that we all have our own collective reality. that's just me getting very philosophical to say that I think that's the best way I could break down the ideal of alternate timelines and dimensions. Minimus says, I found my twin flame at the end of the 7 years of trials and tribulations. Now I have to live in her dreams. Basically, I have to wake her up from her sleep through the music I will bring her. That's very interesting. And, I know with twin flames, the idea is that it's different than a soulmate. Usually I hear soulmates as someone that you have similarities to. Twin flame, there's more of a lesson that goes with it. And it's interesting that you are going to wake her up with music, because that's a really powerful thing. Music is, sound is, words are. And I'm sure once she is awake, I see you said like a fairy tale, she will appreciate all that you did for her and all the sacrifice that you made there, Minimus. But and Minimus said, my soulmate is my wife, her sister. Whoa, okay. I'm kind of like, because I know some people believe soulmates and twin flames are different. So you're saying that your wife is your soulmate and her sister is your twin flame, if I'm not mistaken? That was a plot twist I was not expecting there, I'm not gonna lie. I'm familiar with the term soulmate, twin flame, and that they can be very two different people, but interesting. So, in one family, both are coexisting there. And Seaman said it's wonderful. That's well, I'm glad that it's all worked out that way for you. Yeah, when it comes to soulmates, twin flames, the one, if there's multiple people that are the possibility there, I honestly have varying ideas about that. But I will say that I do believe that everyone in our life, regardless of the relationship that we have with them, whether it's a negative or positive one, whether it's a family member or a stranger, is in our life for a reason, and nobody walks in or out of our life by chance. Even the most painful relationships that we have, whether it's a friend that betrays us, a family member that's toxic, someone we're in a relationship that leaves us, that there was a purpose that they were there to serve, and there was a timeline that they were on, and once it ends, you move on to other things. There's seasons for everything. But there's definitely a purpose to everyone that surrounds us. And I would also go to say that, since I was talking about simulation earlier, our minds and the way that we program our minds and the way our minds push out the reality that we experience based on our level of faith or lack thereof, and what we think and what we say, and everything, that our minds are like computers, and computers run off of code, and code runs off of an algorithm. And I'm just going to use this quick example of algorithms. So I remember when I was trying to heal from heartache, I had a lot of things in my algorithm that weren't conducive to my healing. So I had to actually go in to every website that I used frequently, whether it was social media or just a random site, and click on the ad and say, don't show me this, sensitive, irrelevant, whatever. And over time, by telling it to hide those ads and then purposely looking up things that wouldn't trigger that, it reprogrammed my whole algorithm. Even the advertisements changed. It's very similar to our mind. We have to constantly feed our minds the proper diet and tell them what we want to think. And sometimes our minds don't want to think that, because sometimes our minds, especially our flesh, is more geared towards negativity. But that's why it's so important to affirm and say scriptures, because that feed your mind the correct mental diet, and like an algorithm in a computer, you reconfigure your mind. That's why they attack people through entertainment, to feed them an unhealthy, unclean spiritual and mental diet, because then it causes their mind to be tainted, and then it breaks faith and it pushes out more and more negativity. And this is another reason why, if you want to get into medicine and why big pharma is so scandalous, is if you have people that are dependent on drugs that numb them, or you have addicts, they're not in control of their life. They're not in control of their mind in the way the reality is being shaped. And without faith and without a relationship to God or the Most High or the Creator, you're not on a path that's going to lead anywhere good. So there is that as well. But there's just a lot that in this world today I realize was set up to keep us distracted and keep us as far away. Either they want you deceived or confused, because someone confused doesn't necessarily do things out of bad intentions. It's just more out of ignorance, but someone who does things out of bad intentions willingly has truly been tainted. Even the idea where they say someone doesn't have a conscience, think about that for a minute. If you don't have a conscience, they're saying you don't have a moral compass. You don't care about that voice in your head that's saying, hey, maybe I shouldn't do this. This is wrong. What they're also saying is you've given way to your flesh, pretty much. You've given way to something darker because you've silenced your inner voice. You've silenced the ability to do and think the right things. And that in itself is frightening. I think the limitless spaces too, as I'm going back to this, the idea of the back rooms where you're running through an endless hallway that's never ending. It represents this idea of being trapped in this matrix of never ending monotony, of confusion, of sorrow. And I think this is the reason why so many people today are struggling with mental health and with sadness and everything, because when you feel stuck, it's hard to have passion. You turn apathetic. It's hard to live for anything. Some people become very fearful because they feel so out of control. It's not a good feeling not to feel like you have control of your own life. Evelyn Match Friday said we need more happy plants. Is that what you're saying for healing? Definitely more plants. Going back to herbal medicine would be idea. Everything that we needed, God gave us from the earth. Yes, oil does come from the earth, but a lot of it's been altered in labs. Kind of like food, naturally food was given to us. It grows. It's animals as well. So that would be helpful, because a lot of these drugs lead to negative side effects. They can damage people's livers. They can cause other issues. And some people unfortunately get addicted to these drugs, or their bodies depend on them, and they don't react well. So that would be helpful. Unfortunately, now, too, I know I was talking to a friend, and I know she really didn't mean anything bad by this, but one thing that she did say, she was praying for me, and she was praying about, she was going off a Christian book that she had about renouncing any occultism. And the reason she was praying that over me is because I had mentioned to her briefly about the whole Shinshonji experience. And they weren't occultic, they were just a CULT, not a OCCULT. But anyways, in that book, they named herbal medicine as, or alternative medicine as demonic or witchcraft. And I found that interesting because I've heard some people say that, and yes, you have New Age, and you have people in witchcraft who do use alternative medicine. But alternative medicine itself is not something that belongs to pagans or belongs to witchcraft or is satanic. It's actually something very naturally occurring. Hello, Jeremiah Humans, and thank you for the super chat. I see Jeremiah said, I enjoy your videos on fallen angels and paranormal romance. Thank you for that. Yeah. I'm glad that you enjoyed those videos. I know it's been a while since I've done a video on either of those two topics. I know back when I first started the channel, that was the main thing that I did discuss. And it is something that is still very relevant that is happening. Speaking of fallen angels, the Euphrates River is drying up, and that is prophecy about the Euphrates River drying up and the bowls of wrath. So, there's also the idea within Revelation, I believe it's the 6th trumpet, where 4 angels are released from underneath the Euphrates River as well. And they really did, especially during the days of like Twilight, True Blood, and all these vampire, werewolf, and other alien love shows, they pushed them a lot in like late 2000s, like 2005 through 2000, and I'd say up to the teens, like 2015, there was a lot of that being pushed, and a lot of people walking around, mothers and daughters alike. If only I could have an alien or werewolf or vampire boyfriend or whatever. And people really, they push that because I do believe that these entities do walk among us, and that these entities, I've heard some interesting, compelling stories from people I know and people on YouTube. I'll tell you a few I've come across. One YouTube channel I watch every now and then because she covers like some of the histories of some of the old Hollywood starlets. She talked about because she's of Haitian background. When she was younger, she was in Haiti with her uncle, and they were walking together, and there was this man, and she looked at him, and he was super tall, and she said he had like fangs, and her uncle saw as well, but her uncle put his hand over her mouth so she wouldn't talk about it, and the reason being is because he understood that if she said anything about that vampire, that it could try to harm them. And I've heard stories out of Mexico from my side of my dad's side of the family of witches that had like vampiric abilities. They could detach those. They were shapeshifters. And there was a video on TikTok I came across about Nephilim DNA, and sometimes people with shapeshifting abilities have Nephilim DNA, and Nephilim DNA is just fallen angel DNA. And I do believe that there are fallen angels that do mix themselves, whether it's done through modern alien abductions or it's done through the lab. And this is why they were pushing a lot of that. But in Mexico, it's known about Pele Lechuza, these witches that can transform. They look like regular women by day, but at night they feed on young children and infants' blood. And there were cases throughout central Mexico where infants were dying with their blood drained. Now, as time went on, they stopped seeing these incidents and they try to explain it away. But other places around the world, every place around the world has legends of vampires. And there was another story I came across on TikTok of this woman. She said that And this one really made me think. She said her daughter woke up and she had these bite marks on her neck. And she couldn't figure out what it was, like if it was a bug bite or anything. She took her to a doctor, and then it happened again around the same time. She discovered another bite mark on her ankle, and then she noticed other members of her family were getting bitten. And this lady, of course, she consulted in a psychic, and I'm not saying to consult mediums or psychics. And the lady told her there was, because some people thought it was aliens, there was a vampire after her daughter. Well, this lady told her that, well, the reason why is because when her daughter had summoned the vampire, so she asked her daughter about it, and she swore she never did, but she had an obsession with, like, vampires back when she was a teenager, because when this was happening to her, she was a young woman. So she renounced all of that, and they prayed and, pleaded the blood of Jesus, and the vampire never came back. But there's stories I've heard of people seeing figures like this and losing blood. And blood is used during a lot of these rituals because life is in the blood. So I do believe, like, when you look at cases like Saint Germain in Louisiana, this guy who resembled another figure in France who would throw these parties, and he would never eat. He would just be seen drinking this, what they thought was red wine. But the thing that really tipped everyone off is one day a prostitute stayed with him, and on the balcony she ran away because she said he had tried to bite her neck and drink her blood. And when the cops came, they found out that cup he had was full of blood. So I do believe there are things that are not quite explained. I do think a lot of these things can be attributed to interdimensional activity. I know that also, modern aliens, a lot of this stuff is tied together, as ironic as that sounds. Jeremiah said, I found you on another channel, The Scariest Movie Ever. Oh, yes. Yeah, Scariest Movie Ever. He makes really good work. And, I'm forever grateful for him sharing my content on his channel years back. Evenly Match 40 said, this is random, but that story reminds me of the Batman vs. Dracula movie. Oh, I don't think I've seen it. The main villain. I could see why, with Dracula being in it. And Batman, it's kind of vampiric. But, what I take from that story is that you do got to be careful about what you wish, because we talked about manifestations last week, and I do believe manifestations are real. I believe everything in our life is manifested from what we think and what we say, and it can be proven in the Bible. Do I believe in, like, getting deep into it and trying to impose your will on everything? No, but I will say that what you meditate on, you will get. So, unfortunately, there are people who were meditating on these paranormal experiences and beings, and they may have had beings that became attracted to them. And this is why we have a lot of incubus succubus cases as well, where people have incubus or succubus spirits visiting them, in some cases molesting them. And even with aliens, like some people who claim to be abducted by aliens become fascinated with them before they get abducted. Or they're fascinated with the occult, and next thing you know, they start having extraterrestrial visitations. I know when I was a teenager, I was looking into aliens, and I was looking into them really fervently, because I was like, I want to know about aliens, I want to know if they exist. And I wasn't to the point yet where I believe they were interdimensional beings. And one night, as I had just finished looking at these stories, suddenly I had this experience where I knocked into sleep paralysis, and in it, I saw these beings that looked like gray aliens, and they were angrily telling me to leave them alone. And after that, I quit looking into them. And I am still very careful about looking into the subject of extraterrestrials. That's another reason why I don't do too many occult videos anymore, just because I do find what you meditate on, you will seem to attract to you in some shape or form. So even that experience I mentioned about the white owl a few months back, I had nothing to do with looking into anything, but I had just been really heartbroken feeling, and, I was still healing over everything, and I was like, why can I not seem to heal this wound? Why does it feel like the thorn in my flesh, like Paul talks about? And I remember praying to God, like, please show me what the source of this pain is so I can rid myself of it. And when I prayed that prayer, I kid you not, I saw something that looked like a white owl. And it had this evil face, like it was sucking my energy from my misery. And when I zoomed out, it looked like a gray alien, like the fourth kind. And I do believe that this being, for whatever reason, was feeding off of my energy and the sadness. And the funny part is, once I started praying against it and everything, I had a couple of other experiences where I had some heartbreaking dreams, and I could always, it felt identical. I know it was that entity trying to come for me from that angle. And ever since I've trained my mind to, I call it like with revise, so with revising my past, I, when I start to have thoughts like, sorry, I'm coughing up a storm here. When I start to have thoughts, for instance, that would come to me in the past, it's very hard to relate to how I was feeling then, but I would have these thoughts that come to me based on that heartache, like, oh, I don't feel loved, I don't, I feel rejected, yada yada, from this time period. And I'd cry over something that happened over a year and a half ago, 2 years in some cases. And then suddenly I would just tell myself, no, I've always, I know God loves me, I love myself, I know my family does, just tell myself positive affirmations, and like, that never happened. And in a way, these negative stories that I fed myself never did happen. Did a negative situation occur because I believed in it? Yes. But when I began to do that, it took a while. Like a computer I mentioned earlier, I had to rewire the way I thought, but now I don't really feel triggered or bothered anymore. And all that time I put into watching advice from people, I was having plenty of people pray for me. I was going to Bible studies, reading the Word. I went to therapy. None of that was really like sticking. I mean, it helped me manage my healing, but what really broke me free is when I had that revelation that God gave me the key to heal myself, and it was through my mindset. And I believe in a lot of cases when it comes to matters of the heart, even within our bodies, that we can be our own placebo, in a sense, that God gave us that authority with our thoughts and our words. And that's why I'm so adamant of why we should speak the right words, speak the word of God, and why, because we were created from his word, and why we should reject things that are tainted for that reason. Because to get to a place even where you feel broken, you let usually something in at that point that allowed you to feel broken, and it was a narrative, like a virus that got in that re-looped. So sorry to go on a tangent, but in talking about it all, it made me think of that. And I see Jeremiah said, it is free, Christ, and I'm not sure Langston said hugs and love. Thank you. Thank you for that. Sending them back to you as well. So we're right at the end of the hour. I know I came on a little bit late. But I am going to stop around 9 just because I got to finish packing, because I won't be home until the middle of the month, and then I take off again. But I wanted to talk to you guys between then, and I hope to make more content even though I will be away from home. And I hope that you guys have all enjoyed this live stream. If anyone has any prayer requests, you can go ahead and put it in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and start praying, but I will look at the chat to see if anyone has anything additional. Father, thank you for allowing us to come together tonight in spite of everything, and I just thank you for just being with everyone, guiding everyone, and I just pray for everyone listening in, or who will listen in the future. Anyone who's participating in the chat, I pray that you would guide and direct their path. I pray that you would strengthen the relationship with you. I pray against any poverty, any lack, any scarcity, any fears, any sickness, any doubt, any anxiety, any mental health issues, any physical health issues, Father. I pray, Father, that you would just align them to your word, Father, and the promises that are spoken in your word. I also just pray for any loved ones of anyone who's listening now, Father, for their salvation, Father, for their healing. I pray for anyone who's going through any financial hardships, anyone who is at risk of homelessness or foreclosure or eviction, Father. I pray for anyone who's struggling right now with their health, Father. I pray for complete and total healing. And as you spoke in your word, that by your stripes that they are healed, Father. I pray that everyone will continue to seek you, and just pray in Jesus' name. Amen. And I'm very thankful again for everyone that has tuned in tonight or who will tune in the future. It's been a very good live stream. Feels like these always go by so quickly. I see Evilly Match put amen with the bear. The bear you put there, I have this bear pillow I got from Montana when I was there last weekend. And I got it, it's a pillow, and to me, it's one of the cutest, most precious things. I call it Montana Bear. Right now, that bear emoji reminds me of Montana Bear. Alright, everyone. Well, we're pretty close to the top of the hour, so I'm going to go ahead and end tonight's stream. Thank you again for tuning in, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. Take care, and God bless.